Welcome to the Happy Market Research Podcast, your favorite place for strategies, stories, and insights from the world of market research. Brought to you by your host, Dan Fleetwood.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Happy Market Research Podcast. I have Andy Garlikov with me today from HowSo. Andy, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Dan.
So, Andy, I know you have a good history, illustrious history, if you will, around how you got into market research, and we kind of talked about this. So, I'm curious, can you give us a brief background and how HowSo came to be? I'm curious.
Sure. By accident.
Okay.
I've been working in customer engagement, executive engagement for a long time in enterprise tech. So running advisory boards, running executive briefing programs. And then part of my job, a recent job, was running customer experience research. In the middle of a project, the company was getting packaged up to be sold. I got laid off. And the company that I was working with, the research firm, when I called to tell them that they'd be working with someone else to finish things up, that they called back the next day and said, "Hey, would you help us with the project?" It's like, sure. And then suddenly it became moderating interviews, and it became writing reports. Suddenly I'm a full-time researcher. And then for a second company, and I realized that all the facilitation skills that I built up doing the marketing and engagement work applied really directly to qualitative research. And I decided that this is kind of fun, and I enjoyed it. So here I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like how people, kind of fall into it. I kind of, I wouldn't say stumbled into it, but, just my path led me to research, and, here I am 20 something years later. So it's pretty common that people kind of, stumble in or fall into this line of work by accident. I'm curious though, what are some of the things you're most focused on now? You're obviously a qualitative researcher. You've been doing it for a while. What are some of the things that you're focused on now that sort of have your attention?
Lately, I've been thinking a lot and seeing some of these new AI moderated research tools, synthetic respondents, sort of the way that artificial intelligence is I won't say creeping into. I think it's accelerating, improving, and mixing up things in the research market. And I've been thinking a lot about the second order impacts of that when anyone in a company can run research projects beginning to end, and how democratizing it is going to have some unintended consequences. Not all bad. In fact, probably mostly very positive. But I'm not sure that researchers or research teams or their clients have thought fully about this, and maybe we don't even know fully. But it's something I've been discussing with folks, and especially going to a conference last week, seeing a lot of these platforms and hearing the way that they talked about their own tools.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of it is companies are saying, "Hey, you need to use AI," and they're just kind of attaching to these tools? Or, there's probably value at some point in the research scale, so to speak, of depending on where you're at. But I'm curious to get your take there. Is it just is it mandated, or is it a real?
You mean on the client
fit?
side, Dan?
On the client side, yeah. From you're talking to on the client side all the time. Is it hey, we have to use these to save money, or is it a real advantage? What are you seeing there from on the client side?
All the above. From the very first projects that I was leading, a lot of the topics of those were around artificial intelligence adoption. And I heard a lot about CIOs or even CEOs say, "Thou shalt use AI," telling brands that they needed to do that. And not just in research, but in everything across the board. Now I think that there are tools specifically, purpose-built for research, and especially qualitative research.
Right.
Research teams and their direct stakeholders, folks in marketing and product, customer success, strategy, they're the ones now driving research teams to do that because of the potential cost savings, the scale, the speed. All those are benefits of it. My big question is what else happens? When anyone can do it fast, that doesn't necessarily mean it creates more understanding.
Sure.
It's really how the tools are used, how research is designed. When anyone can do it, everyone will do it. And we have to figure out how to make that work, because it's really hard to it's not like anyone wants to stop it.
Right.
Well,
That's a
maybe
good point.
someone does, but
Yeah, maybe some people do. Yeah. That's a good point.
that would be fruitless. I
Right.
think
Right.
it's really important to figure out how to integrate these new capabilities into a research team, into consultants that do
Hmm.
research. I need to be able to use those where appropriate, and
Yeah.
work with them, and alongside them where appropriate.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So one of your core ideas, Andy, is moderator versus facilitator. I'm curious, can you expand a little bit about that? Like what's a
Yeah.
moderator versus a facilitator? I'm curious.
Sure. So when I started doing research, immediately everyone talks about a research moderator. And I didn't
Hmm.
really question that. I just kind of went along, okay, I'm moderating research. What I realized, at least the way that I've been able to structure qual studies and conduct them, it's
Hmm.
much more like the way I used to do working with groups of customers, a focus group versus an advisory board, similar things. I would say that facilitation is a little bit different than moderation. And I think a lot of folks who call themselves moderators really are doing more facilitation than they realize.
Hmm.
Moderating is managing a conversation. Facilitation, I think, is setting up the situation, setting things up so folks can share most openly, so they have a more effective conversation, perhaps.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily just marching towards a goal. That would be a little determinative. Um,
Right.
but sort of create the opportunity for the best possible conversation versus just sort of going along with it. So it's less that I'm not saying I do something better than other people. I think we're all doing it. I think we're underselling ourselves, calling ourselves a moderator.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Is it a progression? Like you start as a moderator and then you go to facilitator, or do you see like, is it just a facilitator? I'm curious of like, are these innate skills people have, or do you kind of develop them and then you move up the chain, so to speak?
Oh, it depends. I
Yeah.
feel like when I first started doing facilitation work in the customer engagement world in tech,
Yeah.
um, I fell into it kind of naturally. And I was never trained just to ask questions, and I don't know that that's what anybody is, unless you're perhaps I don't know, a lawyer doing cross
Right.
examination.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Uh, um, I think it depends on style and depends on what your goals are, if and maybe how you come into it. I think
Right.
facilitation is a higher level skill, and I think most folks, again, who are experienced moderators have that skill. And I don't know that it's possible to train those skills. There's
Hmm.
lots of professional development offerings around that in
Right.
different fields,
Right.
but it's not something we've talked about much in the research business, and I'm hoping to change that a little bit.
Yeah. It sounds good. Like it'd be a good conversation to have, I think, no doubt. Where,
We're
where do you
having it. Look
think,
at that.
yeah, we're having it right here. So yeah, we're starting the conversation off here. I like it. Where do you think AI, like as a moderator, works well, and where does it start to break down? I know you have some thoughts about this. I'm curious to get
Well,
your take.
yeah, I mean, with the caveat that in the week or two or whatever it takes to between recording this and posting it, the whole world could
Yeah.
change. We know how fast things move.
Yep.
I I'm not sure I'm an expert on that. I've seen a lot of tools demonstrated. I know that the ability of tools to ask questions, to interpret the results, very high.
Yeah.
It's the person to person thing that is still wanting, at least in my opinion. It
Hmm.
just doesn't feel natural. And that's, again, maybe the difference between moderation and facilitation to a degree. AI can ask questions, AI can ask follow up questions, even if the logic is programmed in or the tools can do that.
Hmm.
But can it pick up on everything? Can it think about the dog that doesn't bark? It may
Right.
hear things, but what was missing, or what are other things to bring in? I Will the tools get there? Probably, eventually. But
Hmm.
right now, it's very good at speed, at going a mile wide, but it's not as deep as you or I talking to a fellow human being and understanding where they're coming from and bringing our whole life experience into that curiosity.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. Do you think from like a facilitator standpoint, I guess humans are better maybe at this point of picking up the different nuances in the conversation and applying those and then taking that conversation in that direction. So, I mean, it seems like it's like, what does a great human facilitator do that AI can't yet? Is it that sort of nuance then?
I think it's the yes and empathy,
Yeah.
picking up on nonverbals. I don't just
Hmm.
mean raised eyebrow, furrowed brow, scrunched nose, but as much as about pauses, about what's happening, about again what's not said,
Yeah.
intonation. There's a whole field of study on interpersonal communication and nonverbal communication that
Hmm.
I think that people innately get a lot of that, that it's not in the tools yet.
Right.
Will
Right.
it get there? I would think so. Just the question is how well and how long it takes to do that. But
Yeah.
right now, there's a lot of stuff going on up here that we can't put on silicon just yet.
That's a good point. Yeah, I remember in my college class, communications 101. I don't remember a lot from the class, but one of the things I do remember is that, 50% of the conversations is nonverbal, right? So what part of that is getting missed with, these AI moderated tools? So you bring up a good point there. So,
I'd say 90% or so. And
oh, you
and
say higher.
ironically,
Okay.
I heard yesterday that I got a master's in communication a while back.
Hmm.
The Our professor that studied nonverbals actually retired yesterday. So it reminded me of some of
Oh,
these
wow.
things in that literally Com 100 class that
Hmm.
I took many, many years ago.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really important, and it doesn't get caught in a transcript, doesn't get captured in a transcript.
Yeah, it's also kind of like, even what you say, like it's not what you said, it's how you said it. I mean, in terms of like you can say something, then someone's going to take it one way, another person's going to take it another way. I'm sure that comes up when you're facilitating things too. There's like the tone and the nuance and so forth. So I'm sure that comes up quite a bit. One thing I want to ask you is like, how should researchers divide roles between AI and humans going forward? Do you have any like, are there any rules for it or tips or tricks there?
Boy, if I had rules, I'd write a book. I think it's as much about what each does as when. So it could be
Yeah.
about phases. Perhaps a qual study with AI moderation that's a little more like quantitatively large. You can reach more
Right.
folks more economically. Could help set some of the scope or some rule out some things to be able to focus when it comes
Hmm.
time to do, I don't know, focus groups, IDIs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it could be using it for that. I mean, right now it's so effective at summarizing and at connecting dots. It can't create new dots yet. That's a
Right.
gap still. You're not going to get deep innovation out of AI. You're not going to get brand new ideas. You're going to get synthesis of existing things, which allow people like you and I to suss out new ideas.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious where have you adopted AI in your workflow? Is it discussion guide? Is it at the end when you're synthesizing all the information, like and analyzing it? Have you adopted AI in your workflow at all? I'm curious
Oh, of
from
course.
a qual
Oh,
standpoint. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
be left behind if I hadn't.
Okay, I
I
thought
use it
so,
as a
but
thought
yeah.
partner, Dan. So
Okay.
I'm always in the loop.
Hmm.
It's more like a colleague.
Yep.
Hey, tell me all the reasons this won't work, or
Right.
what is a different way to ask this question, or that sort of thing. It's ingesting a lot of context, and then obviously it's a great proofreader, and helps me. I can get kind of wordy, so
Yeah.
I'll use it to make my writing more concise. I should probably
Yeah.
have it up on the screen right now telling me that I'm talking too much.
Yeah, see, that's what always happens. I put it in there like, make this shorter, please. Like, I just go on and on. No, I think that makes sense. And is that where you see as like the biggest benefits? Like, if let's say there's a researcher out there who's kind of dipping their toes in the AI water and they want to, improve their workflows, improve their efficiency, is it that thought partner aspect that you think is most effective at this point for qual researchers?
I do, but that's just me. I know there's
Yeah.
folks who will use it more or less in different phases.
Got it.
And so it's really a very personal question, and it's something that obviously that if we're sharing things with AI, where there's any risk at all of that getting exposed, clients need to know about it, business stakeholders need to know
Yeah, of
about it.
course.
But it works for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sure if it works for you, it's going to work for other people too. So I like that. Now, I want to dive into another topic that you actually brought up, and it's something that I think you've been thinking about and working on in terms of researchers as intelligence agents. What is this, and how did you come up with this analogy here?
Well, I'm a student of history, and I enjoy thrillers, and I mean, intelligence officers are, CIA officers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They really are in a lot of ways are researchers. They're trying to uncover something for their stakeholders, for
Mm-hmm.
policymakers, and it's just a different kind of research. The thing that brought it together for me the most was thinking about how intelligence officers recruit assets is very similar to how we recruit people to participate in research. So there's
Right.
an acronym in terms of the reasons that folks are willing to spy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the acronym is MICE, MICE, and that stands for
Mm-hmm.
money, ideology, coercion, and ego. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, there's no place for coercion in recruiting qualitative interviewees. At
Right.
least I have not seen anyone try that one. But the others are relevant, and obviously, money. We pay incentives often to
Mm-hmm.
folks to do that. But folks who do it just for the money, it's more transactional. The same way that if
Right.
someone is a spy for your country and you're just paying them, they could turn, right? They could turn back. If
Mm-hmm.
someone is just getting paid for their knowledge, what they share might be kind of rote. You just don't know. Ideology is more interesting, and I don't think of it as East versus West Cold War stuff, but folks oftentimes will participate in a project, and this comes out in the conversation because they want to help the industry develop tools that'll work better for them. They want things to improve,
Right.
or they feel like a certain kind of solution is right. So they're happy to share their thoughts, their expertise around that, and they're getting paid for it. That's nice too. So
Mm-hmm.
that ideology aspect, we'll call it a small I in the research concept,
There you go.
works. And then there's ego, and to me that's partly in recruiting. Hey, you're an expert. We really would like to hear from you. But
Mm-hmm.
also in the conversation, people it's a natural human need to want to have your expertise, your experience respected, to feel it's
Mm-hmm.
valued. And a good facilitator, see what I did there,
I got you.
will understand that and understand when to reinforce what someone's saying to help them share more. Because it's not about trying to unethically elicit information that you shouldn't. It's about
Mm-hmm.
getting the most out of what you need to and what's appropriate to ask. And if someone were to say, oh, I think this tool it should have a gray button instead of a red button.
Right.
Terrible example, and it's like, oh, well, you use it a lot. Tell me what it is about gray that would make it better. And that little piece about acknowledging people is a little bit of I think playing to the ego sounds perhaps pejorative. It's
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that ego is a motivator for people. So
Right.
thinking about all those pieces will help recruit folks more effectively and make those conversations more effective too. Those research discussions.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, outside of coercion, hopefully it doesn't come up too much in research, like you mentioned. But what motivations do you think appear most often when you're talking with people? Is it ego? Is it money? I mean, what's your take there?
It really varies, Dan.
Yeah.
It depends on the topic, but I
Mm-hmm.
think there's always a little bit of that small I ideology,
Yeah.
that people, where they sit in their organization, in security, in sales, whatever, is going to impact that. And it's as much about motivating them to speak as understanding and framing what it is you hear. Knowing that someone wants to have a certain kind of solution or believes that a certain area has not kept up with the rest of other functions, other technologies,
Mm-hmm.
helps a researcher like me understand and sort of frame that in the overall context of what we hear. So
Yeah.
it's as much about using ideology and as it is knowing it to understand where they're coming from. Where you stand depends on where you sit, right?
That's a good point. How can researchers tap into these things like ego or personal identity to get better insights? Are there things that you do, or how can researchers kind of tap into these things better?
I think be aware of them.
Yeah.
You know, think about when you're when you're prepping for an interview, ask yourself, why is this person participating? Is it just for the check?
Hmm.
Just for the incentive? Or, I often look at someone and I'll look at their LinkedIn if I have access to it and try to understand their experience and try to imagine why they said yes. Because
Hmm.
the kinds of folks, I do all business to business research, mostly in tech, um, and finance and healthcare, but these are fields where people are highly compensated, and the amount that my client is paying to them as an incentive is probably not that different than what they're getting paid, in their regular job.
Right.
So money isn't as big a motivator always.
Hmm.
So I think about, like, what is it that they trying to do? Do I expect to hear them advocate for something and sort of lean their answers one way or the other? Or is it that they're coming here because the recruiter really effectively, massaged their ego and made them feel like they were the
Hmm.
only person who can answer the questions?
Right.
So I've never been in a study where there's only one person who can answer the questions, but it's nice, again, to have folks feel wanted. We've all been there where recruiting takes way too long,
Hmm.
and you're just happy to get a respondent. And I think it's okay to show some gratitude to folks for taking time out of their day to share. I mean, acknowledging they're getting paid also, but
Right.
again, in the end, it's just one person talking to another,
Hmm.
and I treat those the way I treat regular conversations.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else you want to mention on researchers as intelligence agents before we
Oh
move
gosh,
on?
that could be a whole
Okay.
we could do a whole thing on that. I think it's okay. There's one more thing, actually.
Yeah.
When I go through and I synthesize everything and I'm ready to think about recommendations about what I'm going to present to the client, I also do what agencies will do, which is they call red team it. So
Mm.
create a group that'll say, let's figure out all the reasons why this might not be right. you
Right.
know and so sometimes I'll use AI to help me with that, because it's hard to then take, for a person to totally turn their entire point of view around.
Right.
Or sometimes I'm able to do it where it's, okay, what are all the reasons why these conclusions that I drew from this project could be off?
Right.
And I think we owe it to our stakeholders, to our clients, to share the skepticism when there is skepticism. I mean, I want to give clear recommendations. I want to give clear insights where they're there, where they exist. And if there's things where there's other possibilities, I feel like they deserve to know about that and not just get confidence at the potential cost of accuracy.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's important, right? I mean, at the cost of accuracy and just learning like what are the alternatives? What else should I be thinking? What are going to be some of the arguments against what I'm proposing? So I think that's very powerful. I like that you're using AI to red team it too. That's another good use case to think about some of these different things. What, kind of switching gears a little bit, Andy, what's something in market research that you feel is overrated right now? Is there anything that comes to mind there?
I think that, and this comes full circle to the beginning of our conversation, the
Yeah.
idea that more input is going to specifically generate better results, better
Mm.
conclusions. Sometimes it will, if there's gaps to be filled, but there's a point at which more input can also confuse things. And what you can learn from 10 interviews might be easier to understand and honestly more accurate than 100, because there's those other 90 could create a lot of things that are outliers that
Hmm.
might be worth exploring, but might just cause paralysis.
Right.
So I think just the idea that scale is the answer to everything is, to me, overrated.
Makes sense. What's underrated? What's not talked about enough?
You know what? In the world of AI, I think it's human empathy.
Mm.
I think it's rapport building with folks that you're interviewing, and making them comfortable, creating the circumstances for a great conversation that will yield interesting and useful insight.
Right.
And I think that, again, the two go together. Of the search for scale means making things, you stretch things out, makes them wider but shallower. Too shallow or not wide enough are subjective questions. But I feel like people who do a better job connecting with the humans across the table or across the camera like this will yield better input for their work and ultimately better outcomes for their clients.
Yeah, that's good. What, in terms of like a practical takeaway for the listeners, if someone wants to become a better researcher, a better qual researcher, what should they focus on? What comes to mind?
Listening more than talking.
Yeah.
We talked about empathy. Actually, it's hard to just create curiosity out of nowhere, and you have to be a relatively curious person to do more than just read a discussion guide and ask questions. So I think the idea of being, and I'm gonna mangle the quote. It's from one of my business school professors, Mark Rittenberg. He said, "Be open to outcomes versus attached to outcomes." So our stakeholders may be attached to an outcome. It's our job for us to be open and to try to open them up to whatever the truth is that we want to present, as opposed just to confirming something that folks want confirmed. And that takes, you have to kind of step out of yourself a little bit for that. So I think working that muscle, that, empathy, curiosity, and sort of suspending judgment until you've gone through everything and thought about it from all the angles that you can reasonably and efficiently do.
Yeah, I think that's good. Being attached to outcomes. I feel like in research, sometimes you're doing research just to confirm what you want to be, what you want to happen or what you want in the product or service, but being open to different outcomes, I think it's sometimes difficult for folks. I know it's, so I think it's a very, very impactful quote, I think, that your business professor gave you there. So I'm glad you remember that.
from UC Berkeley.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. What I know you mentioned some tools like with AI that you're utilizing. Any other tools, frameworks, or habits that you rely on in your work?
It's the idea of red teaming, of continually going back and just questioning everything. I think that's the most powerful thing of not just marching down to a result that was potentially predetermined. And that's hard. Because my clients, they if we're looking at a product, looking at a mess, that they want to say with certainty, we go with B, or we will definitely put this feature in, and I feel it's incumbent upon me to understand what they're trying to learn and give them as accurate and effective guidance as I can, and that isn't always certainty of everything, about everything. So it's more just, I guess, healthy skepticism at every stage is what I employ, and that's in looking at who I'm going to interview, that's in the discussion guide, that's in the moment in these conversations, and especially in the synthesis, the analysis, and how I present it back to folks.
Yeah, healthy skepticism. I like that. Well, Andy, this has been a lot of fun. I know folks are going to get a lot from being a better facilitator using mice. If you're just tuning in now, you have to go back and learn what mice is and just all your tips and tricks. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And before we leave, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, the work you're doing? Is LinkedIn the best place, or where would you point them?
I am the only Andy Garlikov on LinkedIn. I promise you that. So I'll be easy to find there.
Great. Andy, well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me.